It's Retro Podcasts with your host, Retro Lion. We talk music, entertainment, films, and more. And now, here he is, live, Retro Lion. Mr. Aikins, how are you doing?
I'm doing great, Ben. How are you?
Doing fantastic. Been swamped with illustrations.
Oh, that's good. That's a good problem to have.
Yes, been swamped with illustrations and also podcasting. You are actually the first guest for season 3 of Retro Podcast.
Oh, that's I hope that's a good thing.
It's fantastic. It's a good thing. I mean, you illustrated for Nickelodeon. You illustrated for Hasbro. Now, how did you become a freelance illustrator?
That is something that I always set out to do, and that was kind of one of the my main goals after getting out of art school in was it 1995? So it's been a while now, and I had gotten my first job, big job out of art school, was working at a large newspaper down in Cincinnati. And I started freelancing and picking up jobs while I was working there. And then my second job out of school was at an illustration studio. And while I was working there, I was working evenings doing freelance and building up my freelance career. So it's something that started early on and kept going since then. I left the day job world in terms of working for somebody. Left that in 1999. So I did about 4 years of salaried salaried work with health insurance, and now I'm on 25 years of freelancing.
Impressive. 99 is actually when I was born.
Ah, man. Yeah, I'm old. And so it has been 25 years of being stuck in a basement studio. So,
Well, it's very nice. I like everything you have set up.
well, and that thankfully I was able to, whenever you go looking for places to live, you look for where you're going to be stuck, what hole you're going to be stuck in for most of your life. So, I have taken over the basement in this house, and it is Dave land.
The man cave.
Well, yeah, that's it's all I have.
And for most of your artwork, you do the combination of traditional illustration and digital illustration. And do you enjoy traditional the most or digital?
I enjoy whatever gets the job done the quickest. It really is a matter of what I'm making random noises. It really is a matter of what gets it done the fastest. Rarely does anything kind of come into play that one way looks better than the other. So it really does come down to time. And I found out early on, I started working with licensed characters, which is characters owned by companies that get licensed out. So like Mickey Mouse and SpongeBob. And I started working with them in that industry in 1997 when Photoshop was just kind of building up some steam. But we would still look at jobs and think, oh man, is this going to crash Photoshop? Is this, you'd get a board game job with a big board, to illustrate and think, yeah, there's no way I'm going to have to paint this. And then you're matching your airbrush paints to little tiny Pantone chips and dealing with that nightmare. And I also have a tiny bit of color blindness, so that didn't help. And revisions are a nightmare. So in terms of that world of licensed characters where colors have to be certain colors and everything has to match, when Photoshop came along, it was a no-brainer. And the moment that the computers and the programs could handle the files needed, it was, the airbrush was put aside, and traditional was very happily given the boot, because there was no longer panic attacks to get to FedEx. By the time FedEx closed, figuring out which FedEx was the last FedEx to close, which is usually the airport, um, or figuring out where to scan things, and how much is it to get a drum scan, and peeling off the illustrations off illustration boards so that they can wrap around the drum scan, and just all of that stuff. And I was the very kind of that generation that learned both. Started up with traditional as the computers were being brought into art schools, and so I was taught, traditional and digital, and yeah, it wasn't hard to say, oh yeah, that's way too time consuming. That'll work better. And then other things you would think, yeah, you know what, that's better. This part of it is better here in traditional, and that's better. I tend to do any color work traditionally. I will do drawings, do renderings, do value studies by hand, and even with that, I'll color it digitally.
Very cool.
So yeah, so even when I have hand done stuff, it goes into the computer. And most of the licensing stuff, even the drawings, switched over to digital probably around 2010, 2012-ish. I think that's around the time I bought my first Cintiq tablet. And then even with licensing, the drawing stages became 100% digital. So no more paper, no more scanning, no more printing out reference. It was a hard couple of months of not wanting to throw away the Cintiq, but thing was a pain in the butt to learn.
And with doing licensed characters, especially Nickelodeon licensed characters, when you go to conventions, at your booth you sell Funko Pops, but on the Funko Pops you paint characters on the Funko Pops. And most of those, do you actually like hand paint them, or do you like print, or do you like hand paint them on the computer and then print them and then put them on?
No, that's all got to be hand done. That part of my business, whatever, that part of my career is kind of some of the only things that get the drawing table, which is kind of back there, dusted off, and kind of get my hands dirty. And that kind of goes to the saving grace of people owning handmade art, and which is something that hopefully will always be there, and is computer proof, AI proof. So yeah, when I do conventions, and that's when people like the drawings, and hand done drawings, and hand done paintings, and portraits, realistic portraits that I do. Those are all kind of for collectors, and it kind of helps me kind of get the hands dirty and switch gears. The Funko things are a pain in the butt, and I don't necessarily enjoy doing them, but friends of mine like them, and so I kind of every now and then I'll grit my teeth and spend a couple of days, because you kind of have to do them assembly line because of the way that the paints go. So it's you line up maybe 10, 20 SpongeBob pops, and yellow, and just spend a couple of days yelling because the paint pens are inconsistent, and the way that they take to the plastic is inconsistent, and you're trying to paint on a flattened box, and I mean it's just a royal pain in the butt. But I mean, that's kind of back to the days of dealing with yelling at your airbrush, clogged airbrush, and all that stuff. So it's yeah, it's it's yeah.
And the traditional pictures that you make now, these are you get requests from people, is that right?
Yeah, there's a collector community that is nice enough to commission requests from me from time to time based on convention appearances, and then sometimes I will do whatever I want and try to find homes, sell them later. I like publishing, self-publishing collections. I have a new hardcover collection that's on Amazon, that's available on Amazon. That's kind of collects a lot of the ones I've done for the past. I think I started them maybe 7, 8 years ago of doing these kind of rendered realistic portraits of pop culture, TV, movie kind of characters, and they're done in Copic markers and Prismacolor pencils, and they're technique studies from photographs, but people like collecting them, which is nice, and it allows me a break from Paw Patrol and cartoon dogs. So many cartoon dogs.
And I actually do have a request for a SpongeBob.
Yeah, really. Okay.
It's uh it's Bad Santa, Billy Bob Thornton's Bad Santa, but with SpongeBob. Can have Squidward as Willie and Patrick as Marcus, and I assume Mr. Krabs would be he would either be John Ritter or Bernie Mac's character. And and of course SpongeBob would be Thurman Merman.
Oh man. Well, as long as it's stuff like that. The danger with combining Nickelodeon with things that are adult based is you either have to water it down or you don't do it, because obviously any sort of in jokes that go too far, even when I jokingly do, SpongeBob Punisher, he tends to have little cork guns, or even if it's like SpongeBob Wolverine, he's got Krabby Patties in the in his claws. But
My favorite
SpongeBob's
one
not.
is my favorite one is the Blade Runner.
Oh yeah, Blade Runner.
SpongeBob.
I like doing SpongeBob drive. SpongeBob is probably my favorite. It's definitely my favorite for kind of convention sketches and things. And now I've started to do conventions with Tom Kenny, who is the voice of SpongeBob. So we get into even more trouble with that. Yeah, SpongeBob Legos. Yep, he's a sponge. It's 25 years of SpongeBob this year,
Yes.
which is just, well, I mean, it's 25 years of you. So there you go, 1999.
Yeah. And speaking of Nickelodeon, something I want to talk to you about this year. Nickelodeon, well, not Nickelodeon. I'm sorry. There was a documentary that came out recently called Quiet on Set, which talked about a lot of dark things that happen on Nickelodeon with a lot of live action shows. Have you been aware of this documentary? Have you heard of this documentary? Or
I've heard of the documentary, but more importantly, I thought that all of that was common knowledge over the past. I mean, time is no meaning for me, so I thought that the guy and his behavior had been common knowledge for a long time. At least I don't know if 99 or 2019 or whatever, but he had been kind of given the boot from Nickelodeon, and all of these things were, to me, at least I had read up on it for years now. So yeah, it's not the documentary isn't something that I've been watching or something that I even have been unaware of. It's sadly just been a problem that unfortunately a lot of industries have with people that bad players, which is a shame. And there you go. Thankfully, on my end, I have yet to be involved with, I think, with any. I think the worst thing on any property I've been involved in have been like Dora voice actress lawsuits or whatever. Some of the Doras. I don't know if there's how many lawsuits there have been on some of the at least one of the Dora voice actors wasn't too pleased when she was given the boot. But again, I don't know. I'm at the far end in Nick Jr. land with cartoon characters. So thankfully, have absolutely nothing to do with any of the things that have had problems for them. But it's a shame.
My thoughts. I haven't seen the documentary, and I really have no desire because from the trailer. It's very disturbing, and I just couldn't sit down and listen. But for the folks that had to go with these sort of situations, I feel bad for what they had to go through. And yes, it's a difficult industry, but for people that want to go into illustration, especially like big illustrations, what is the advice you would pass on to them?
Oh man, that's something I've been thinking about a lot lately as I get to 30 years, and it's a lot, and I am not the best person to talk to people who think that illustration for them means pursuing their unique vision. And for artists who have very specific goals, um, I my goal was to work. My goal was to work and keep working, and after that point was to be paid respectfully for that work. And that was kind of it. I was looking for opportunities, and when they arose, when they would show up, I'd be prepared and I would take them and see where they went. And if some opportunities led in directions I didn't want to go, eventually I would take the luxury of quitting that and hopefully take on something else that would come up. Um, and so for me, it's just been a lot of following opportunities, and less of me specifically trying to um, get a more specific goal. So, I never said, oh, I want to be a comic book artist, or oh, I want to work in fantasy art, or any genre, quite frankly. I just wanted to work. I think for younger artists these days, the biggest problem that they're going to face is debt. And the sad reality is that, especially if a younger commercial artist, and again, I'm talking about commercial art, so I'm talking about working for clients, um, if they've spent all this time and money and effort for a certain goal, obviously they owe it to themselves to try to pursue that goal and give whatever their goal is um, every chance and every ounce of their energy. But at the same time, they have a second responsibility that is of equal measure, and that is to eliminate debt as quickly as possible. And so there's a juggling going on that has to be done at the same time, and that's I can imagine very, very hard to do for some artists. Maybe not for others. If your goal is to work and to get paid respectfully for work, then that kind of coincides with eliminating debt. You're going around and you're trying to find jobs that pay a reasonable amount, and you're not necessarily getting up in your head about any sort of notion of, well, that's not what I want to do, or oh, I don't want to sell out, or oh, I don't do that, things like that. Obviously we all have a certain point of nope, no thanks, but I think the danger with a lot of artists is that they want to find jobs that pay them to be themselves. You know, let me be me. And you know, that might be hard to book those jobs day after day after day, year after year after year. So at a certain point, there's a certain kind of level of what is acceptable. And for me, it was really simple. It's I just like to draw. You know, I like to. You want it cartoon? Sure, okay, we'll do some cartoons. You want it realistic? We'll do it realistic. You tell me. I'm happy to. And I think it benefited that I never had a real driving singular vision to my work. There never really was a point where if I sat down and did a portfolio, they would consistently look like an Aikins. You know, it was always all over the place, which is why I was a good studio artist, which is why I got jobs, in-house artist jobs out of art school, because I had a versatility and still do, and I like that. I get bored looking at the same stuff over and over again, especially if it's my own, you know, or if it's my own style. It's just not something that I tend to do a lot of, or really care to do a lot of. But that's different. That makes me weird. I think, in a certain extent, there are a lot of artists that they do their thing, and if you want to hire them, you hire them for their thing, and you know, which again is great, but it's not something that I know a lot about, and it's not something that I've been able to make a career out of. So yeah, it's I found more success in the licensing, and which is basically being a mimic, which is like a weird combination of being a cover band or being a studio musician. You know, it's somebody coming in and saying, okay, for this, we'd like a guitar solo that kind of sounds like Hendrix. Okay. You know, okay, now a guitar solo that sounds like Van Halen. Oh, okay. You know, and that's with these characters, you know, hey, this show, this character, this style, the looks like this. All right, I can do that. You know, okay, now this style, this show looks like this. Okay. You know, you know, and they make you do tests usually, and you do sample pieces, and you kind of sit there and double check, you know, that it's something that you even want to bother with or even can do, or are comfortable doing. And I would say that 99.9% of the time, I'm all in. I think recently I had one that showed up was actually the revamp of Dora. That when they sent it to me, I kind of looked at it and went, no, no, I'm good. I think I'll. But even that, I was like, oh, okay, I have to do this. And then you kind of take the challenge. Okay, let's see if you can do this. And then sadly, the person at Nickelodeon that I had worked for I think almost 20 years got let go, along with a big amount of Nickelodeon staff. And so I was kind of like, all right, well, if he's not there, because that's the only reason I was going to do this. I guess maybe I'm good. So, but you know, a lot of the things for me with this stuff that I deal with nowadays are things just becoming more elaborate and more time. The character designs, because of CGI, are much more elaborate these days, which means that my end of drawing these characters is more time consuming. It just gets a little bit harder to figure out the efficiency aspect of this, which, you know, makes kind of like a weird demotion when, you know, sometimes you see these characters and think, yeah, no, no, I liked it better when it was SpongeBob and regular Dora, and these character designs were clean and simple.
And now we have CGI SpongeBob and Dora, and of course Nickelodeon is making a fourth SpongeBob movie.
Well, CGI SpongeBob thankfully didn't redesign SpongeBob. So when, in terms of like, they didn't suddenly give SpongeBob shoes with buckles, and they didn't suddenly give SpongeBob all these extra unnecessary details. And that's what happens with CGI with new characters, is that they're not limited um, to what an animator has to draw. They're limited to what the computers can render. And so they'll go in and they'll add pinstriping and buckles and patterns and details that in classic cell animation would never have been there, just because you'd never be able to have people draw that for cell animation. And so thankfully, like with SpongeBob, when they went CGI with SpongeBob, my end of SpongeBob, he looked the same. We would do, the books, a lot of the books that I do are kind of drawn as if they're cell animation. So for Paw Patrol and SpongeBob, and if you open up a book that I do, it's kind of like the shows were done in cell animation, which can be a lot of fun. But but sadly, these characters are drawn or designed now for CGI, and they don't need to be concerned about details. And so when Dora gets redesigned, all of a sudden she's got patterns on backpack and shoes with buckles and lines and just all these extra little details that on my end, and it's not even it's not even a critique on whether or not it looks good. It's just more work. So you can't help for somebody, for my job to be kind of like in that position of thanks, thanks everyone. Ugh. But it does get down to like something with the Dora redesign. The question then kind of becomes, you had a gazillion-dollar property that I worked on for 18 years that was huge around the world, and it all was based around this character that was nice and simple. And so, what does all this extra mean? What does all this extra? It didn't have any, this thing was gigantic without all of these bells and whistles. So, and then the second side of it is, does adding all of that kind of take away the charm of what made the original succeed in the first place? I don't know. And with SpongeBob, I really liked the CGI SpongeBob. I worked on stuff for Camp Coral. I thought it was really neat looking. So I didn't really have any problem with that. I thought that it kept a lot of that it was fun. But at the same time, they didn't eliminate regular SpongeBob. So it wasn't like they said, nope, this is all you get from now on. This is what we're going with on everything. So they would just kind of do the movie projects and things that have that CGI look to it. But the show is still the show. Quite frankly, my favorite SpongeBob has been the stop animation specials they've done.
Those are
like
good.
the Christmas and the Halloween. Oh man, those things look great. I think those things are fan-freaking-tastic. So yeah. I think that character works well, and when they've done those different genres, I think those have been fun. It's been fun to be a part of. I don't know if I'll be doing more with him. It just, in the publishing world, SpongeBob pops up and then goes away, and then pops up and goes away, depending on what the publishers or Nickelodeon. Sometimes it's the publishers are happy to do projects, but Nickelodeon says, "Nah, we're good." They want to focus on newer things, or things that they are trying to push, or doing their big media pushes. If they've got something that's got toys, then they need books and the whole bed sheets, the whole kit and caboodle of merchandise.
Oh, yes. Well, Mr. Aikins, thank you again for joining today's episode. It's great to see you again, because the last time we saw each other was at Columbus College of Art and Design.
Oh man, yeah, that hey, you survived.
Yeah, I did, and I graduated.
Oh yeah, you got that piece of paper that you'll put somewhere and then forget about.
It's framed. Don't worry.
Oh, I don't know where I have to say the humor with mine was when they handed them out, they were the ugliest. They were just the ugliest diplomas I'd ever seen in my life. For an art school to have an ugly diploma was very, very. I don't know. It was kind of on brand. It kind of, it was kind of like, yeah, this tracks. This is about right. It was like, yeah, we did it. We're out of here. What the heck does this thing? This thing looks terrible. I went to doesn't the school have a design department? What?
Exactly. Oh, the degree's perfect in mine.
Thanks for listening. Be sure to like and subscribe to our YouTube channel. Follow us on Spotify and follow us on Instagram. See you next week.